guarantees. We welcome now to the Element Well studio Robert Dozier. He's the executive director of the Mississippi Independent Pharmacies Association. Always good to see you there, Robert. What's going on?
Good to see you, sir. How you doing?
All right, so this is anything that deals with the pharmaceutical industry seems like is in the news.
That's correct.
Constantly.
On all sides.
Right.
All fronts.
Right. Federal level, state level. Certainly here within our state.
Yes, sir.
Our legislature has considered legislation. I know you've been involved in that as well, related to the industry. We, of course, have witnessed supply chain constraints, especially since COVID. That really brought to light just how much we rely on. We were talking about it off the air, China for production.
Unfortunately, you're correct.
Of drugs that we use, we need. I talked to a close friend of mine I play golf with on a regular basis this weekend about the shortage of chemotherapy drugs, which has got national attention. And honestly, he started explaining it to me and kind of what action they're taking to address it. It was over my head when he started getting into the various standards of dosages and generics versus name brands and all kinds of stuff. I mean, it's complicated.
It is.
Extremely complicated.
The prescription drug world or chain, so to speak, from all the way from the manufacturer to the patient, it's a lot of players in there, and it is a very confusing chain, so to speak. I mean, you have drug manufacturers, you have pharmacies, drug wholesalers, pharmacy benefit managers, insurance companies, and by the time it gets to Miss Smith, there a lot of people have touched that prescription drug.
It's and the price of drugs, of prescription drugs. I kind of liken it to the price of airfare. It's like, well, that doesn't make any sense. I go 200 miles, it costs me $1,000. I go 1,000 miles, it costs me $200.
Yeah,
and price of prescription drugs is like not logical often.
If you stop right here and you go from the Biden administration all the way back to say Bush Sr., every presidential administration has always wanted to tackle the high cost of prescription drugs.
Sure.
But it doesn't matter if it's a Republican administration or a Democrat. None of them have done it. They've always talked a good talk, and prescription drugs have steadily gone up over the years. And everybody's always wanted to point the finger at Big Pharma, the brand name drug manufacturers. Well, I'm not going to sit here and say, they're totally innocent in this, but they're not the only problem. We have this middleman out there, pharmacy benefit managers, they have been hiding behind the curtain, so to speak, all these years, but they have a lot to do with the high cost of prescription drugs out here. And if Congress doesn't do something and the state legislatures across the country, if they don't do something, prescription drugs are steadily going to go up and up. I mean, if you just stop and think about it, employer groups out here, it could be a Mississippi company, a national company, or wherever, employer groups' healthcare costs are steadily going up. The employees, the patients, their monthly premiums, their copays are steadily going up. Pharmacies' reimbursement is steadily going down. So what's wrong with that picture right there? If those three entities are having problems, who's making the money? Where's the money going to? It's not going to the pharmacies, and the employer groups and the employees. They're spending more, getting less as well. So it's these insurance companies, the pharmacy benefit managers, and so on. They're a problem in this chain that we have right here.
Well. So here's the dilemma. The way I see it is, we need insurance. Most of us cannot take the risk of trying to pay for what might be medical expenses that we just don't anticipate. It's the reason we have insurance to mitigate that risk. And of course, drugs, pharmaceuticals are part of that. Could be part of a treatment regimen. So we need that. But what's wrong with the insurance ecosystem that's causing this imbalance? Like you say, the price is going up, but it's not making its way to the retailers who sell these drugs, the pharmacies.
That's correct.
And there's middle actors in the supply chain that I guess are siphoning off some of the profit.
That is true. So right now, there are three big pharmacy benefit managers, PBMs. The biggest three are Caremark, Express Scripts, and Optum Rx. They control 80% of the marketplace right there, 80%. So that tends to make me believe there's somewhat of a monopoly out there. And so if we want to have a marketplace that is free and healthy, there needs to be competition. There needs to be transparency out there. There is no transparency in this prescription drug world right here because the pharmacy benefit managers, they don't want transparency. Transparency to a PBM is kind of like sunlight to a vampire. Just they don't want it. They don't like transparency. One thing is that's one of the problems that we're seeing is the high cost of drugs. Prescription drugs are going up because the pharmacy benefit managers require the brand name drug manufacturers, Big Pharma, to pay these rebates to get on these drug formularies. So Big Pharma out here, I'm taking up for Big Pharma, and I don't represent them or anything like that. Big Pharma has to pay to play. If they want their drugs on this preferred drug list or this formulary, they have to pay this rebate. And so therefore you would think that this rebate is passed down to the end user, the patient, the employee. But it's not 9 times out of 10. It's pocketed by the pharmacy benefit manager. And that's one thing.
Sitting in the middle.
Exactly. And there are other ways as well, too. They use pharmacy benefit managers. They want to use a outdated benchmark called AWP, average wholesale price. Well, that has been, there's a lot of scrutiny on that. It's been a lot of litigation. Former Attorney General Jim Hood settled a massive case many years ago for the state of Mississippi, somewhere maybe $20-30 million, that Mississippi was basically overpaid on this AWP methodology. So this AWP methodology only benefits the pharmacy benefit managers. And so we need to move away from that AWP methodology for more transparency and such.
Interesting. Well, the Biden administration, you were talking about that earlier, how the government seems to always talk about the need to rein in the price and certainly the increase of prescription drugs. They come out with this plan in the Inflation Reduction Act, which allows, at least this is the way they describe it, allows Medicare to negotiate. But it doesn't seem like that's exactly what it is. It's more like Medicare says, this is what I'm paying, take it or leave it. And there's concerns about how that might affect future innovation and even availability of prescription drugs.
Yeah, I go back to the fair competition and everything else a while ago. We have to have fair competition, and the drug manufacturers, they go out there and they take the risk to develop the drug, R&D and everything, and they have a lot of expense in this. We don't really need to handcuff them and such, but we need to. This administration and the previous administrations, they've all focused on the drug manufacturer.
Yeah,
that's part of the problem. I agree,
gotcha.
But you have to turn the page and look past the drug manufacturer and say, okay, what else is driving the cost up right here?
Because it's a complex ecosystem.
It is. I'm not going to deny it. It's very complex, and over the past year or two, really a lot of sunlight has been shown on this whole model that we're looking at, this whole chain.
Go, Robert, what would you like to see the state do here from a legislative perspective? The
state really needs to pass PBM transparency for employers and patients. They also need to maybe look at seeing if they're getting the best deal with the state employees' insurance health plan. They also need to ensure that their pharmacies, chain and independent pharmacies in the state of Mississippi, can survive in this marketplace and be able to give the citizens of Mississippi the safe health care that they need and deserve.
Gotcha. I know you're going to be working with the legislature next session, right?
We try to. I hope so.
Well, I hope they're listening and they hear you, because they need to speak more frankly with you about this issue. I know you're deeply involved in it and know all the ins and outs of it, and hopefully we can get something done.
All right, my friend. Thank you.
Appreciate it. Robert Dozier, Executive Director, Mississippi Independent Pharmacies Association, has been our guest here on Middays. We're coming.